Today I'm going to show you how to make a soft book. So my husband and I have created these books for our daughter Willow, and we created our first one before she was born. And this is a fun project to put together because there's a lot of design details and then printing out on fabric and putting it all together. It's just made out of fabric and tissue paper and some sewing. And I will walk you through the entire process of how I designed it on my iPad, took it to the computer, printed it out on fabric, and then put it all together. I love these projects. I would love to maybe publish one of these books one day. It's a dream of mine, so I'm going to walk you through the process now. The book that I'm making today is a recipe book to go with the play kitchen that I made for Willow for Christmas, and so I'm going to just print out some recipe cards and blank pages, and then we'll go back in and fill it in with some fabric pins and write in our recipes. Then we'll print out some photos on iron-on paper, and then we'll iron on the photos later and kind of fill this in together as we cook together as a family and find our favorite recipes. To begin creating my soft book, I started by designing the look of it on my iPad. I'm using the app Procreate and an Apple Pencil, and this is just a tool that I use for so many different projects, and I love it so much. So I am just using the pencil to doodle and create these images that are going to become the book, and I did a lot of handwriting within this. And after I designed the cover and some images that I could take into Photoshop, I airdropped all of the images to Photoshop, which is an Adobe program that's also amazing. And I used text and just designed the cover and the pages on Photoshop. I'm now going to print out the designs onto fabric. Next, you cut out the fabric, and you'll do that by just measuring it according to your printer paper, which is usually 8.5 by 11 inches. And I did it just shy of this measurement because I wanted it to feed through the printer properly. I'm using a super old printer. I think it's like 10 years old, and there are probably more efficient ways to do this. This printer and this method have served me well, and I know there's also fabric that you can buy that's printer paper basically. I've tried to use it with my printer, and I think my printer is just too old for this method, but it might be a great option if you have to print out the fabric. To print out the design on the fabric, I'm going to tape the fabric to a thick cardstock paper. The reason I'm doing this is so that it feeds through the printer properly, and it takes a little bit of trial and error, but I'm going to hold the paper in the printer until the printer takes over and just feed it through the printer, and it comes out printed on your fabric. I cut out all of my pages, and I want a few empty pages for this book because of how I designed the book to be filled in later. So I'm going to line up all of my pages and put them in order, and if it's a front and back piece of a page, you're going to line those up facing one another. So you want the right sides of the fabric facing together, the design facing together, and then on top of these pages, you're going to add a piece of tissue paper. This is going to give it the crinkly effect that is so fun for babies to hold. Now just sew along the 3 edges of the page, leaving the left side open. And after you sew at 1/4 inch seam allowance, now just cut the corners of the pages and flip it right side out. You can use like a pointed object to make these corners crisp. For the back cover of the book, I cut the last page a little bit wider than the other pages, and I'm going to use this as the binding. So I put all of the pages in order and laid them on top of each other and measured how thick I wanted the binding to be, and I cut it about 1.5 inches wider than the other pages. I folded the fabric at the top and the bottom to create a crisp edge, and then once more to create the binding. Just take note that if you have more than about 4 or 5 pages, you'll probably want to sew this by hand because your sewing machine might not be able to handle the thickness of the pages. My book was a little thinner, so I took it to the sewing machine and sewed along the edge of the binding. So now Willow has a recipe book that we can fill in with her favorite recipes later on. I'm really excited to iron on some photos of food and her cooking and us in the kitchen as a family. I feel like this is a fun, interactive soft book, and this is a look at our other books that we made. There's a sourdough book that we made last year for her. It was a lot more involved because I did a lot of hand stitching and felt designs, and it's a story about sourdough. And this one is called Before There Was You, and Jordan and I wrote this before Willow was born. It's about Willow's family and her grandparents, how she came to be, and it's just a story that is personal for her. And we've just loved creating these books for Willow. Hopefully one day we'll be able to publish them for other people or just create an easy resource to make these books of your own. And in the meantime, if you make your own soft book, I would love to see it. Please let me know if you make them. Ask any questions. I would love to help you out.